All right, once again, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening for this webinar on real estate opportunities during the coronavirus outbreak here in Israel. We have quite a full program, so I'll give some quick introductions for who's going to join us tonight. Before I do that, please note there is a Q&A section in the webinar. If you have questions that you didn't pre-submit, please submit them there. We can't promise to get to all the questions live, but we certainly will try after the sessions. And if any questions are unanswered, we'll try to answer them afterwards. This evening we have three speakers. Our first speaker is Noam Vassal. Noam Vassal is of Noam Homes, a real estate firm that specializes in residential property management and sales in the Jerusalem city area. Noam Homes is a well-established independent agency, and hundreds of Olim trust them to focus on what's best for their interest and needs. Noam will speak about how to find your home in Israel, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. Following that, we have Debbie Solow. Debbie's a real estate attorney with over 20 years of experience in residential real estate. She specializes in purchases and transactions here in Israel and for clients abroad. She's the managing partner at Rosen-Solow offices, which is a boutique law firm representing Olim and investors in real estate transactions all over Israel. And today she will speak about the process of buying your home in Israel from afar. And then third, we've got Dan Eisenberg. Dan made Aliyah 6 years ago from New York, and he is today the Chief Commercial Officer for IsraTransfer. IsraTransfer is the preeminent foreign currency services provider here in Israel. And for the past 6 years, Dan's helped hundreds of clients in their real estate purchases, and he has the honor of having moved over $1 billion globally. That's pretty impressive. And so Dan's going to talk about how to get the most shekels for your dollar and everything you need to know about that and how to avoid headaches. So if we'll get started right away, because we've got quite a full program. Noam, take it away.
Thank you very much, Hillel. So we have a discussion today about real estate opportunities during Corona in Israel. Today, my name is Noam Vassal. As you said, I'm a real estate broker. Noam Homes, which is my office. We are a well-established bilingual real estate agency specializing in sales, rentals, and property management with a personal touch. Now, we have a situation here which is known to everyone. It's the real estate, the Corona situation and how it influences real estate. Now, these days, the state of Israel and the entire world obviously are facing a huge challenge, the Corona epidemic. It's happening everywhere, and there's a thing going around, the Corona epidemic. In the nature of the new situation, questions are raised, dilemmas and challenges as well. Property holders of real estate investments throughout all the epidemics, wars and such have asked themselves always questions about what they should do and what is now a good time and stuff like that. So apart from the challenges of questioning and timing and stuff like that, after every past crisis, real estate investors are always found that not only did they not fall, but had much success in the past and have leveraged it for success in their properties and prosperity. Now, basic Israel real estate market supply and demand. I'd like to put a focus on this because this is very, very important. The pre-Corona Israel real estate market was suffering a lack of 30,000 new apartments a year, rental and sale. Currently, there's a shortage of 70,000 new apartments on the market, okay, because we're lacking the place to build, and it's built all the time. So there's a current lack of 70,000 new apartments on the market. With expected aliyah, these numbers are expected to grow to around 150,000 apartments in the next few years. The Corona has caused people to make the leap of aliyah they were considering to make for years. Now, what buyers are looking for these days in Corona time? The porch and gardens have become a very big necessity, with people having to spend some time in self-isolation. This is a very big part right now. An extra room or storage unit that can turn into an office, okay? Since self-isolation, a lot of people have been sent to work from home. So there's a lot of demand for a space in the apartment that can be isolated and taken into consideration when purchasing a property. Close to everything. Apartments should be near the stores, near where things are happening, so they don't have to go far, restaurants and such, Home Depots and so on. Okay? Now, the increase in aliyah requests from around the world during coronavirus, this is from the end of May, okay? South America, there's a 23% increase in aliyah requests. Italy, this is from May 2019, May 2020. Italy, there's 433% increase in Aliyah requests. Belgium, 500% increase. France, 422% increase. United States, 204% increase. Now, it's very important to note that just in June, there were 25,435 requests from North America to make Aliyah in June 2020. So we're looking at a very big market that's looking to make Aliyah, and right now, the supply and demand are definitely going to be a big key factor here. Purchasing from overseas, it takes some creativity, it can be done, okay? Using apps like Zoom, WhatsApp helps the buyers to view the homes without breaking quarantine or violating social distancing protocols. Virtual open houses. Unlike a typical showing, a virtual open house allows the buyer to enjoy a personal tour of the comfort, out of the comfort of your own home, okay? Viewing more available homes. You can see many more homes because the option of viewing it over Zoom and the lack of needing to coordinate a babysitter and such, you can do all that from where you are. Now, real estate via Zoom, WhatsApp, virtual tours of apartments and neighborhoods. You can see stuff that usually is a little binding with times and schedules and stuff like that. From your own comfort of your own home, you can do all that and you can see stuff. Open houses. We've done open houses for clients from LA the other day, 2 clients. They wanted to see a house and they loved the house. And the third criteria here, which is power of negotiation from abroad, this is where the clients who can be brave enough to make a decision from abroad can get a very big discount, because right now with the lack of people being able to come to Israel, there's an actual void with the expensive apartments. So if you're looking in the range of expensive apartments, there's right now definitely a void that's fillable by people looking to make that leap, looking for a nice apartment, and can invest and obviously purchase it from abroad. Okay, the negotiations are very, very successful for my clients who have done that. Webinar informative conferences. Obviously, there's a lot of these coming up, and very, very informative for the Israeli market. Now, there's also a need to know how to prepare for house hunting in Israel, okay, and in general, obviously. Know that there's no right time to buy, okay? It's coronavirus, it's protests in the States, it's all the things happening around the world. Know that there's no right time to buy. If you find the perfect home now, don't risk losing it because you're trying to guess where the housing market and interest rates are going. Those factors usually don't change fast enough to make a difference in an individual home's price. Okay, there's always time you can recycle a mortgage and check out other stuff like that. Don't ask for too many opinions. It's natural to want reassurance for such a big decision, but too many ideas from too many people will make it much harder to make a decision. Focus on the wants and needs of the people who will actually be living in the home, like where schools are, where distancing from places you need to be at, all these types of parameters, where your family is situated in Israel. If you do have, accept that no house is ever perfect. If it's in the right location, the yard may be a bit smaller than you would hope, the kitchen may be perfect, but the roof needs repair. Make a list of your top priorities and focus in on things that are most important to you, like the porches and the gardens. Those are starting to become things that are very, very important for everybody. Don't try to be a killer negotiator. Negotiation is definitely a part of the real estate process, but trying to win by getting an extra low price or refusing to budge may cost you the home you love. Remember, your home doesn't exist in a vacuum. Don't get so caught up in the physical aspects of the house itself that you forget about important issues such as noise level, access to amenities, and other aspects that also have a big impact on your quality of life and your family. Choose a home first because you love it, then think about appreciation. A home is still considered a great investment, and appreciation of value is incredible. Now, there's certain things in Israel you need to know about, which are purchase costs. Right now, it's being discussed, the purchase tax. This could vary between 0 to 10%, depending the price of the property you buy, depending the apartment. Okay, that Debbie will be able to maybe go into further with somebody who has a property that is looking into and wants to know what purchase tax you'll have to pay. Aliyah comes into effect here and all these types of parameters. Real estate agent, the fee is 2% plus VAT from price of the apartment. The lawyer, it's between 1% to 2% plus VAT from the price of the apartment as well. A mortgage broker, that varies on an amount taken. It's about 1%. It could be more, it could be less of amount loaned plus VAT. And the inspector. So this is an inspector to come and do a physical inspection of the property. That's between 500 plus VAT up to 5,000 plus VAT, depending size of property and depth of report, from verbal report to written report. So obviously the better report to get is a written report, because then you can come back and see what was given to you as a given, and what was verbally said to you doesn't have any backing. An appraiser. This is an appraiser for a bank or for the appraisal of the property value for mortgage. That can range between 800 to 3,500 plus VAT. That could be higher depending on size and extensive checks done, okay? Now, a lot of these costs that I just mentioned have a minimum. Sometimes you'll have a minimum of 4,000 shekels. So if you're looking at a 300,000 shekel apartment, there might be a lower level that you'll have to start paying from. Now, lift shipping costs, that determines how much you're bringing, where you're bringing it from, and all these types of things. Conversion and transfer costs. We have here the excellent Daniel Eisenberg, who will be able to expand on this, but that ranges also between 0.5% on up to 3% on the money brought over from abroad, depending bank or service used. Turning a house into your home. These are some pictures of apartments that we've sold in my office, and you can see the picture on the left doesn't look so appealing, but on the right, it's after renovation, and it's a beautiful, beautiful apartment. It's rented out on Airbnb, and there you can see another view of the same apartment, a beautiful apartment outcome. So definitely keep yourself in the game, learn what you're looking for, the communities where you want to live, and then start looking with an agent at all the places that apply towards you. Now I'd like to hand it off to Debbie Rosen-Solow, the attorney. She's going to be talking now. Debbie?
Yes, do you see me? Okay, great. Good. So hi, everyone. Thank you very much, Noam, for all your great tips. My name is Debbie Solow. I'm an Israeli trained attorney. I am fortunate enough to have parents who have made Aliyah for me. So I did not have to go through many of the dilemmas that you're facing today about making Aliyah. And my parents have spared me of all that. And I've been working in the field of real estate law for over 20 years, and mainly with Olim and foreign investors in Israel. So my English has improved significantly over the years. My Hebrew is better than my English. Now, I would like to touch on today on 3 issues that are pending coming and doing these transactions. The first is the significance of signing a purchase agreement in Israel. The second is what checks need to be done before you sign a contract in Israel. And the third is the specific circumstances that are different during COVID-19 that require special attention when purchasing a property from afar. So you find your dream home in Israel, it meets your budget, it meets the size you need in the neighborhood you want, it is exactly what you dreamt of. And it could be that at that point you will want to know, what's the next step? What do we do next? How do we continue with the transaction? So you may be asked to sign a Tofes Harshama registration form with a contractor if you buy off paper, or you may be asked by a realtor to sign a document, or it could be that the seller will ask you to sign a memorandum of intention just to specify the deals and lock you into a transaction. So the question is, should you sign such a document right away when you're pressured into the deal? So the answer to this is no. I believe that before you sign, you may want to sign, but before you sign, make sure that you understand what you are signing. Make sure that if it's in a language that you're not familiar with, you don't sign it until you have it looked over by an attorney. And then the next step, it is important to note that in Israel, once a contract is signed, the buyer and the seller are bound by it, and any change or alteration of the terms may cause serious implications and monetary consequences. So as opposed to the system in the United States where you can sign an agreement and then decide if you want the property, do all your inspections, check for financing, check if you qualify for a mortgage, see if it even meets your needs, and then you can walk away. In Israel, it is different. In Israel, it is very rare that a seller will allow you to sign a contingent contract and allow you to sign and then check for financing and all the other inquiries. In Israel, unless you are purchasing on paper from a contractor and there's no building permit yet on the property, and that's a very individual situation, you will not be entitled to do all these checks once you sign. At signing of contract, the responsibility is already shifted to the buyer. It is not like in the States where all the responsibility is shifted towards the closing stages of the transaction. And at signing, you will be expected to sign, or your lawyer to sign for you, on all the deeds of the property. They will be kept in escrow by the seller's lawyer until you transfer title, but until you transfer all the money, but they will be signed at that stage. You will be expected to report to the tax authorities that a deal has been signed within 30 days, and money will be transferred to the seller at signing between 10 to 20%. You will get a guarantee for your money. Your money will not be jeopardized. It's not going to be dangerous, but you're already expected to put down 10 to 20% at signing, and most of the money will be given to the seller before the stage of possession. Now, the reason it's done this way is because in Israel, once you commit to buying a property, the seller of the property will commit to buying something else, and his seller will commit to buying something else. So there's a chain reaction that one is responsible for the next, and if everyone just walks away from the deals, the Israeli economy would be in great trouble. So this is the way the system works in Israel. So because of this, when you decide you like a property, that wonderful property that you found, and you make an offer, make sure that your offer is contingent upon a legal check, a physical check, and a financial check of the property. So when you go into the legal inspection, it is important to make sure that the seller, the owner, is the owner of the property. You will want to make sure that there are no legal blemishes on the property. In the United States, it is common to obtain an insurance policy called a title insurance, which ensures that there are no third-party claims, no rights or blemishes that negate your right to purchase the property. In Israel, it is your lawyer's responsibility to make sure that this happens. I had a case of a purchaser who purchased in Ra'anana. He went to a very well-known criminal lawyer in order to go through with the transaction. This property happened to be registered at the land authority. And when it comes to the land authority and those type of title registries, the debts on the property are registered at the Ministry of Pledges. Now, this lawyer, who was an expert in criminal law and not in real estate law, was not aware of the fact that the debts on this property would not be registered at the same registry like when purchasing at the land registry. This was the land authority, and the debts are registered at the Ministry of Pledges, Mashama Mashkonot. These clients have signed the agreement, and they weren't aware that there was a tremendous debt to the tax authorities. And at that point, after discovering the debt, they have come to our office and come to me, and we were able to negotiate with the tax authorities and with the seller. We renegotiated the deal, and they were extremely fortunate that there was enough left that they still owed the seller to pay the tax authorities, and their deal was secured. But the moral of the story is make sure that you go to a lawyer who's an expert on real estate law to follow through with the transaction. Then there's the physical inspection. As Noam has said, you would want to make sure that an engineer checks the property, that there are there's no water damage, there's no physical damage, there's no construction issues. This is if you're buying secondhand. If you're buying from a contractor, you will have it in your contract that you can do this inspection just before the key and make sure that it is built according to Israeli law and regulations. In terms of the zoning in Israel, it is a common phenomenon that people expand their properties and not necessarily while obtaining the proper heterei bniya, the building permits that are necessary in order to do so legally. They will close a porch or close in the halal, a space behind their house or the roof, or add a few floors below their property. It is extremely important that before you sign a contract, this is discovered so that you're able to transfer title to your name as a buyer. And if you're interested in obtaining a mortgage in order to finance your purchase, the evaluation of the property will be lessened if there is any illegal building in the property. And to financing. Because of the strict implications of signing a contract, make sure that you know when your money is going to become available to you and how you are going to finance your purchase. If you're interested in taking a mortgage in order to purchase your property, you will be able to get 50% as a foreigner. As an Israeli, you'd be able to get around 70%, and as an Oleh, 75%. And to these amounts, you may even be able to get additional funding. What's crucial is that you get a preliminary approval in writing before you sign a contract, so you know that you are approved. And in order to help you with this, you can turn to the banks directly. They all have mortgage consultants, or you can get advice from a mortgage broker who is an expert to advise you on a specific mortgage that can help you. You are in a situation where in Israel, there's so many different types of mortgages. There are mortgages that are linked to the index that are not linked to the index. There are those who are variable rates with those with fixed rates. A mortgage broker who's an expert in the field, and any of us, Noam, Daniel, and myself, will be happy to refer you to excellent mortgage brokers who can tailor the exact perfect type of mortgage for your needs. Now, Noam has spoken about all the expenses that are tagged on to the transaction. One of the major expenses is purchase tax. Purchase tax is a tax that investors will pay at 8% to 10% of the purchase, and as well as people who are purchasing their second apartment in Israel if they are not foreigners. If you make Aliyah within 2 years from the date of signing a contract, you'll be entitled to a reimbursement according to the sole residence scale. And according to the scale, you will be entitled to a complete exemption of tax on 1,750,000 approximately 1,000 shekels. So up to that amount, you will not have to pay tax at all. You will get that back. And above that, you will pay 3.5%, 5%, 8%, and 10% according to the price of the property. There's an additional scale which many don't end up using because it's just not worthwhile when you're purchasing your first property unless you're buying a very expensive property that exceeds the price of a bit over 5 million shekel. In that situation, it may be worthwhile, and in other very, very specific situations. Now, the third topic I wanted to touch on is the circumstances of purchasing from abroad. Firstly, it is extremely important when you're buying from abroad to secure a team of experts that will help you with the transaction. Especially when you're not here, you need the team that will be your eyes and ears for everything that needs to be done here. According to the type of property that you are buying, you will need different types of professionals involved in the deal. As I said, there may be legal building, there may not be legal building, but when you start the transaction with a realtor, with a lawyer, they will advise you on exactly who you have to get on your team. And it is important to make sure that you get references for your team and you make sure that you work with people that you feel comfortable working with you and speak your language. Secondly, in terms of the documents that need to be signed in order to purchase from abroad, you will have to sign specific documents either at the consulate or apostille. Those are specific ways of authenticizing documents to make sure that you are the buyer and buying them. Both Daniel Eisenberg and myself are happy to help you with a team that can get these documents signed and make sure that it is all done properly, and then very quickly, like FedEx, it can be transferred to Israel and the deal can be done very quickly. What is very important though is that even if you speak to experts in real estate law, not everyone is familiar with the process of working with foreigners and buying from afar. So that expertise is extremely important as well. At this point, I would like to transfer the mic to Dan Eisenberg, who will tell you more about financing the project and how to do it in the safest and cheapest way possible.
Thank you so much, Debbie. It's nice to be here with everyone. Let's see. Okay. I come in only at the end of the process. Basically, when you find your place with Noam, you work out all the legal issues with Debbie. Now you need to make sure that you can get your dollars over here into shekels in order to pay for it, because almost all property in Israel is contracted in shekels. What that means is that you cannot wire, or I'll start from the beginning, you can't write a check, and even a bank check from your American account to send it to the seller. That just doesn't work. There's a unique way that property is transacted in Israel. Again, it's not better or worse than America, it's just different. So that's why you need to have people that will walk you through it. So the company that I work for, called IsraTransfer, I started as a client. Back 6 years ago when I was still living in America, I was looking how I was gonna bring my money over. And I did all the due diligence, which is very important to do. And at the end, I chose IsraTransfer. After moving here, I met with the owners and they were looking for somebody to help them with business development. And this job I got just 2 weeks after moving to Israel at a Shabbos meal. And I've been here ever since. So where I come into the picture, again, this is towards the end. My job is to get you the most shekels for every dollar that you send with the least amount of headaches. Sometimes a bank check is needed for the closing. Closing in Israel, as Debbie said, is the signing. When you sign the contract, that is the closing, because there's no backsies after that. So very often a certified bank check is needed. So in order to have that certified bank check, I need to be able to get your dollars. We have to clear them at the bank and get them into shekels so we could produce that bank check. It's a critical part of the transaction, and it's one that we always deliver on. The other payments that are typically made that we're able to take care of for you is the balance of the payments that are going to be made to the seller. As Debbie said, you don't pay everything at once, you pay it in stages. The first payment is typically done with a bank check. The subsequent ones are by transfers, and we do that for you. In addition to that, you have to pay the closing costs, such as the lawyer, the realtor, the acquisition tax, paying the engineer, paying the mortgage broker, paying the person who does the appraisal. All of that we're able to do for you. All of that without you having to have a bank account here in Israel. One of the reasons why, even if you had a bank account in Israel, it wouldn't be an easy process for you is because compliance now has become very tricky with the Israeli banking system. Years ago, the Israeli banking system let money come in from all different sources, many that they should not have. Subsequent, the US Treasury sued the major Israeli banks, and now these banks do not want to deal with Americans because it's too much of a headache. So they just keep on asking for more and more paperwork in order to show that the money is really kosher. And for someone who's abroad, having to deal with the bank is not a pleasant experience. So what we do is we comply with all the anti-money laundering. We're able to do this because we're licensed by the Ministry of Finance, as well as the Anti-Money Laundering Authority in Israel. We take care of all the documents that's needed for source of funds, whether it's getting a letter from an accountant or tax returns or pay stubs, all different scenarios where we know what to do and we're able to do it efficiently for you. There's ways of having to designate what the purpose of the transfer is, because what happens is that, and this is very important for security, is that when money is sent to us, we have to declare where does this money come from and where it's going to be going to, because the bank doesn't let us just send money willy-nilly. So there's a lot of paperwork that's exchanged. Almost all of it, I'm doing it with your lawyer or with your accountant. Your goal is not to have headaches. I get all the headaches for myself so that you don't have to. And then we work with the clients, and this is very important, when to actually pull the trigger to convert the money, because the exchange rates vary a lot. This is looking at the past year of what the rates have been. And this over here was during the COVID period, but you see just how quickly things shot up.
And we don't actually see your slides. I think they're not being shared properly.
Oh, okay. Well, so I'm going to, so anyway, I'm sorry. So you didn't see my slides. So, okay, but we're going to send it to you afterwards. But the amount of fluctuation that was in the past year on $1 million home was more than $100,000 in the difference. So it makes a big difference when to actually convert the funds. So that's something that that we help with. So I know that lots of people had questions, so I wanted to have a chance that we can answer as many of the questions as possible. So I'm going to turn it back to the moderator so that we can answer the questions.
Great. So thanks to our three panelists, first of all, for their presentations. Hopefully they gave you a taste of each part of the process. We did get a lot of questions in advance, and some came over the Q&A now as well. I can't imagine we'll get to all of them, but we certainly will try. So let me start with a question for all of you, so maybe make sure all of you are unmuted. Starting with you, Noam, the question for everyone is, can I buy a property over Zoom? So I know you touched on that a little bit, but just generally speaking, answering if people are asking, is it possible to buy a property over Zoom from afar?
Definitely. In Israel, there's concrete houses. So a lot of the issues you'll find are dampness and moisture and stuff like that. So if you can get like the agent that you trust to have a look at the place for you and point the camera up at ceilings and corners, you can get definitely those things that everybody fears. And that's why sometimes they say, oh, I don't want to come to I want to come to the apartment and step in the apartment. You can ask the agent to point the camera in the places that are uncomfortable and what's behind the closet and stuff like that. I've had it all, and I've moved closets for clients. This is definitely something that happens. So in the sense of a real estate agent, I know I do the extra mile for clients for what they're looking for. I've flown drones on top of buildings to show people what the areas look like, and it's helped to close deals, thank God. So on my perspective, definitely it can be done over Zoom. Debbie?
Debbie, any quick comments?
Yes. So firstly, I'm glad to hear that. Noam is correct. We've had during this COVID season, buyers who were able to secure properties and go through with the transaction, even at the midst of lockdown. We found all kinds of ways in order to get documents to our clients and then have them signed properly and back to us by FedEx, even during these crazy times. I actually had a deal with Dan where we were able to get a apostille. Apostille is a processor that has to authenticate documents. He was able to go over to our client's home all the way from Connecticut. Our clients were situated in New York. He visited from Connecticut, had them sign all the documents, and because in New York we were not able to process the paperwork at that point because the consulate was closed, and we did not have notary publics that were able to take care of that in New York during the midst of Corona, we were able to get this guy coming all the way from Connecticut. He signed on the documents, signed the clients in New York, took the documents back to Connecticut. Within 2 days, he had all the documents signed and FedEx back to Israel, and we were able to go through with the transaction. So it's not like it can be done all through Zoom, but it is enough that you have to sign documents once in front of an authority that we can help you process, and then it could all follow through very, very smoothly, and all through emails and Zooms and video conferencing. It could all be done in this day and age.
Just to piggyback on what Debbie said, that when you're purchasing from abroad, there's unique experiences that a typical Israeli lawyer or typical Israeli realtor is just not used to that. And these are things that can just be frustrating for you at the end, where you're ready to go and you have certain expectations. And if those expectations aren't met, then you're going to be frustrated. So working with people who the majority of their business is working with people who are purchasing from abroad will just be a much easier, pleasant experience for you.
Excellent. Okay, let me see. There's one here for Debbie. The question is, we're looking into buying an apartment on paper. The project says it'll only be ready in 3 years. How do we secure our deal properly? Is there any particular pitfalls we want to avoid? How do we think about this?
Okay, so that's an excellent question, because most of my presentation was focused on properties that are already ready to buy, meaning they're in move-in conditions. When buying from a contractor, it's obviously a different time frame than buying a secondhand home. When buying from a contractor, you can buy something that's very, very close to move-in condition, and then that is a great state and you're not taking much of a risk. And you can buy at very, very early stages when there's still no building permit, the plans are still very preliminary, and usually it'll be cheaper buying earlier on than later on, not necessarily. The risk factor is different, and definitely this is something to consider and make sure that your contract addresses according to the state when you're the stage of buying and how ready the property is and at what stage of planning it is. The second difference is the issue of responsibility for defects. When you purchase from a contractor, obviously you're buying on paper, and many times it's not ready, and you don't have the ability when you sign the contract to make sure it's all done properly and built according to codes and regulations, and everything that is in the technical specs actually appears in the apartment. And therefore there's a law the Chok HaMechel Dirot, which protects buyers in case of buying from a contractor. And there's a very extensive period of time for different defects. The law determines how long the contractor is responsible for these type of defects. And as long as it is not the buyer's contribution to these defects, he hasn't done any malicious damage and it wasn't because of his doing, but pipes have burst or anything that you can see at time of signing is detected, the contractor is responsible according to law for defects. And when you buy secondhand, as we said, it's usually as is. You're buying it in its current condition, so that's different than buying with a warranty from a contractor for different extents of time. In terms of the security for the money, that is also a difference between buying firsthand and secondhand. When you buy from a contractor, at the time when you are buying before it is billed, you should get a bank guarantee or a insurance policy that will protect your money. So every shekel that you put in should be protected with a bank guarantee. So if anything should happen to the contractor, he should go bust in the middle of the deal, your money is protected. And last but not least is the indexes. When you purchase a secondhand home, the price that is stipulated in the contract will be your final price. But when buying from a contractor, there is a hidden cost in most contracts, unless negotiated otherwise, which is a building index. The building index reflects the appreciation of expenses of building materials. So if the sand and the aluminum and the cement goes up in price over time, the contractor puts that expense on the buyer. It is the government of Israel that determines this index that usually goes up over time. So when this is a tagged on expense and you have 3 years until possession, you have to make sure that you take this expense into account. The last point I want to mention is it is very important when you buy from a contractor to check his reputation, make sure you're dealing with a mensch. You should check his track record, how long he's been a contractor, maybe speak to buyers who purchased in other projects that the contractor has built, and make sure that you're comfortable with the transaction.
I'm going to jump in just to say that when buying from a developer, when you have, let's say, 3 years, one of the biggest fluctuations that's going to be in the price is going to be the currency exposure. And this is a very long discussion that obviously is not for now, but one that I have with clients, because you're contracting in shekels and you should not assume that the exchange rate for dollars to shekel is going to stay the same where it is now over the next 3 years. So there's ample opportunity to take advantage in fluctuations in the market where you can either prepay and then you're not subject to the index, or even just that we hold the money in shekels until you want to make a payment on the next milestone. But you have opportunities on when you're buying something that's going to be 3 years away that you don't have when you're buying something that you have to have all your payments in the next 60 days.
Great points. Noam, this one's for you, and this is going to be a little open-ended, so see what you can do with it. Where are the best areas to buy in Jerusalem?
So that's a great question. Jerusalem is a very, very diversified city. Everybody has a picture in their mind from abroad, whoever hasn't been in Jerusalem, from what they see here or there, or people coming back and taking pictures, and it's all black hats or this type of people, that type of people. Jerusalem is very, very, very mixed. So if you're looking for an investment, I would say as an investment right now, what's really hot is the Pinui Binui, where demolition reconstruction process, they're really, really hot right now. There's a lot of demand for those types of apartments where they take an apartment in an old building. In the 90s, they had a big amount of people that came to Israel, and in that big surge, they had to build quickly apartments, and those apartments weren't up to standards as much as people would love to have them up to standards. And now with the new Pinui Binui process, the demolition reconstruction, they allow people to take apart those apartments and build a new apartment altogether with a big lobby, parking underground, machsan, like a storage unit, and 25 extra meters sometimes. So if you're buying a 60-meter apartment for a low price apartment, you could definitely come out with a nice 85 square meter apartment, very centrally located. Sometimes right on the light rail tracks, and it's a very, very good investment if you're looking for that type of thing. If you're looking for high end, if you're on the ultra religious spectrum, there's areas like Ramat Eshkol, and there are areas like Shari Chesed and Rechavia. If you're on the end of not religious, you could definitely find places like Beit HaKerem and Katamon, which are very, very mixed. And these type of things go very, very far. It all depends about the type of person and what he's looking to come with at the end of the day. You know, is he looking for a bigger apartment? Is he looking for a great area? All these types of things.
Excellent.
And budget. You can't forget about budget.
Definitely. That's one of the biggest ones.
Yeah, budget is important. And on that question, Daniel, this one's for you. Can I just buy shekels at my local Chase Bank?
Oh, great question. So people ask me that all the time. Everyone is so surprised that someone who made Aliyah only 6 years ago has beaten the system. So they say, how is it, so the first thing is, can you buy at Chase Bank? Yes, you can. The problem is that you'll pay a lot more for it. And then what do you do when it comes time for the closing, when you need to have a bank check? So it's going to be usually at Chase Bank, charges about 3% to do the conversion. And I only charge 0.5%. So you'll pay 6 times as much. Then the next question is, what about changing it at the bank? Meaning that, I have a bank. When I was in Israel 3 years ago, I opened an account, a tourist account at Bank of Jerusalem. And the person said that because he knew my sister-in-law's cousin, that he's going to give me a very good rate. So what the bank will do is they'll take 50% off of their commission. And you think you got a great deal. However, the commission is only one of the 3 times that the bank charges you. And they're still not going to give you a good rate. I don't charge a commission. So it's something that's irrelevant. But having a person who holds your hand through the entire process is definitely something that you want. And having someone who does it cheaper than everyone else makes it even better. So you want to look for both service as well as the rate. And I think you'll be happy with me. And but please ask me your personal questions afterwards, and I will I'll let you know specifics.
Excellent. Okay, this one is for Debbie. I am seriously considering buying in Gvaot Eden. It's a new construction near Beit Shemesh. I assume you're familiar with it, but we were told that they do not yet have a building permit. Is this a problem? What, if at all, is the process?
Okay, so I am familiar with it. Gvaot Eden is a new establishment. It's a new yeshuv that's being erected right near Beit Shemesh in a beautiful, serene nature reserve. And I get approached daily by many lovely families who are interested in purchasing there. So when you purchase before there's a building permit, there are 2 main concerns. One is that when you sign a contract today and the building permit is not yet given, there could be changes and deviations from the plans that you sign and from the technical specs that you are signing today, because on the plans it'll say that they're not final, and there are times when the local authorities will put in restrictions that the contractor just has no choice about. It's not that he doesn't want to be nice or doesn't want to allow to approve whatever it is that you're buying. Sometimes there are deviations that have to happen because of requirements of the authorities. So in a situation like that, it is very important that in your contract, your lawyer should negotiate a clause that says that if there is any major deviation from the original plans that you sign, there should be some way to handle it. Either you'll be able to get out of the transaction completely, or you should be given a certain amount of time to allow you to decide whether or not you want to continue with the deal. Another side effect of not having a building permit, and it's so preliminary in the stage of planning, is that it might take many, many years until the stages are finalized. Even though when you look into the transaction, it is important to find out exactly what stage of planning it is and how long the expectation is until they get the building permit. And if you have your experts by your side with your team, they can look into how far away reasonably it looks like this is going to take until they get their building permit. Make sure that you have an out in the contract. So if the seller does not have their building permit within 9 to 12 months, you're in a position where you can walk away without any penalties to yourself because you just don't want to wait any longer in order to get the building permit. In their case, it looks like they're really in completion stages of getting a building permit. Their expectation, from what I know, is that they should have it within the next 6 months. So let's wait and see what happens. But if you would like any more assistance with that project, it would be my pleasure to give you some more tips.
Great, thanks. And now one for Noam and maybe for Debbie as well. Someone asked about church land properties. So is this something that you'd recommend or is it something that people should avoid? I think there's a lot of property in Jerusalem that's church land. So how does one handle that? And Noam?
Correct. So a major part of Jerusalem is owned by different churches. There's the Anglican Church and there's the Greek Orthodox Church. There are parts of Ramle also that are owned by the church. And the answer is that you definitely do not have to stir away from properties that are church owned. I know that there are those who only want to buy private lands, but what is important is that you have a lawyer by your side who can look into the transaction and check what are the requirements in order to transfer title in the property. If it is leased land, how long the lease period will still be until the completion of the lease, how many years are left on that lease, what is the situation, whether a company has taken over these lease rights, and what the type of church is. Every church has their approach to transfer of the lease rights. You have to check, particularly in the case of this property, how it's going to work, and then you can assess and evaluate whether or not it is worth your while. I can tell you that I've had clients who got excellent deals when they have purchased church land properties because they felt it was secure, it was worth the money, and they did not feel like they're going to be pushed out of these properties at the end of the lease. Many times we're also able to negotiate with the church directly with their representatives in Israel and see how many years are left on the lease and see what their requirements will be in advance in order to extend the lease rights.
Noam, do you see a lot of church land? Is this something people ask for or ask to avoid?
Yes, so the church land, one of the most famous ones is the Greek Orthodox Church, which has sold their rights to the land to a very nice religious Jewish family living in Jerusalem as well. And I happen to be working with them on a lot of projects, and I happen to know that they do sell the rights for the land right now. So I had a property sold at around 2.6 million shekels in the heart of Tel Aviv, and the person who bought it made it 100% privately owned. And now he's selling it for, after renovation, at 4.5 million shekels, which is one of the nicest properties I've seen in the area. He's done things because there's a lot of lack of zoning because of the ownership of the land of the properties. Who owns it? He has a very, very nice apartment because he's gone and done the extra measures. So it's not something to steer away from, but if you know what you're doing and you're involved properly, then and you take into assumption that you're going to spend an extra 30% to get ownership, and that's only on the Greek Orthodox. The other ones can be extended, maybe even 1,000 years, some of them, but it's still going to be church land. The Greek Orthodox one at the moment is the one that is with the biggest hype because of its location and where it's at in Jerusalem. I happen to know there's even a Syrian church land where a very nice project of a big builder in Jerusalem happened, and that's leased out for another 200 years. So there's a lot of properties on church land. It's nothing to steer away from unless you know what you're going into.
Excellent, thanks. Daniel, this one's for you. Question, I assume, from a parent asking if a parent can send money for a child, or maybe it's a child asking, I'm not sure.
So yeah, so that actually, that happens a lot where, because real estate in Israel is expensive, and you have parents that will, they want, that they're gonna be helping their children out with purchasing property. And because a lot of people are under the assumption that you can only transfer from A to B. And sometimes what they'll do is they'll put the money into the kid's account. And let's again, we'll just go back to Chase Bank. So the parents have an account at Chase, the kids have an account at Chase. So the kids are, 25 years old buying a apartment in Baca, and the parents are sending $500,000 to help them out. Very nice parents. So they put it into the kid's account. Now this causes all problems at the bank because the bank says, hey, how does this 25-year-old have $500,000 to his name? So what we often do is we have it that the parents send the money directly, and then we do the compliance work and the source of funds and all that with the parents. And we have to show that really that these are the parents of these kids, which is very easy to do in Israel. And then we're able to make all the payments for them. So definitely we do that all the time. And it's not something that that's a problem.
Excellent. Noam, I think this question is probably best for you. Maybe Debbie wants to jump in as well. What are the ongoing costs of owning an apartment other than the mortgage payments? The property taxes, maintenance costs, insurance, things like that.
I was just thinking about that one. I saw it. So there's a lot of variables here. There's a few questions like there's apartments and buildings that the maintenance costs are 2,000 or 3,000 shekels, depending where in the country. In Tel Aviv, it could even be 4,000 shekels. They have pools and whatnot, gyms, a guard inside the lobby, and all these types of things. That could be one big cost. And the insurance very well depends on the size of the property, what's the worth you're insuring, and if you have workers come in, how much of a liability are you willing to take on yourself in the insurance? And that also is a huge expense. There's a lot of variables there, but definitely that's a very good question. And each apartment that you purchased has its own variable list, per se.
Excellent. Okay, let's see. I think we have time for a couple more. So this one I think is probably best for Debbie. We are looking into buying a place in Jerusalem. What is the typical compensation if the contractor is late in completing our home? So I assume this is a new project from a contractor.
Right. Okay, so when buying from a contractor, in their contract, you will have a possession date, which is a tentative date. And then according to law, if the contractor is 60 days late, he can be 60 days late according to the current law. They're talking about changing it now because of Corona and giving him even an additional month. But right now the law is that he has 60 days to be late for any reason whatsoever. He doesn't have to give you any explanation. He can be late without giving you compensation for 60 days. Beyond those 60 days, if there are any force majeure situations, such as a war or a general strike in the country, or there's a shortage of building materials, there's a whole list in the contracts that usually go into the contractor's contract that allow the contractor to be late. Usually we try to help the buyers and put in some kind of stipulation where the contractor has to try his best in order to mitigate these circumstances and do his best in order to minimize this delay. And as long as he has done so and it is out of his hand, he does not have approval from the authorities. It could be all of these situations that are out of the contractor's hand. He has a right to extend the being late without compensation for those days as well. Now, once those 60 days have passed, and assuming there's no mitigating circumstances, no force majeure situations, after this period has taken place, the buyer will be compensated by 1.5 times a rent of a comparable area in size and in area, meaning a comparable apartment that is in the area where this apartment is situated, 1.5 times that rent. The buyer will get that for the first 8 months, starting from day one, meaning even if he was 60 days late, you will count retroactively after those 2 months, he will be compensating from day one, 1.5 times the going rate of a comparable rental. And that is for the first 8 months. And starting from that's for the first 8 months. Starting from the 9th month, the contractor will pay 1.25% times the going rent for a comparable area. So it's a little bit complicated. I'm happy to write this out for you, but in general, it's more than the rent of a comparable property in the area. And the idea is that usually at this point, the buyer would be having to rent elsewhere and they're getting a little bit more than that. And that is usually the full extension of compensation that the seller will allow in these circumstances.
Great, thank you. Okay, so this is the last one. I like the way it's worded, so I'm going to do this one. And it's for all of you, really. It says you all sound very experienced and professional, so good for you. And I guess the question is really about where you work. So do you represent clients only in Jerusalem area or all over the country? Maybe starting with you, Noam.
Definitely, we represent people from all over the country. We just had a community from Canada contact me regarding projects, and our company started looking for projects, first-hand departments for these clients. And one of those clients actually got very interested in Tel Aviv, in Netanya. And from Netanya, there's another person in Herzliya Pituach that asked me to sell his apartments. And I have Herzliya Pituach, I have Netanya, I have Kfar Yona. We're very much around. We when a client comes to us with a need, we definitely help them find how to help them out the best we can. And thank God it's working pretty well. Our company has grown quite nicely because of the mouth to ear that people are spreading. And that's what we look to do, you know.
Great. Debbie, same question?
Our firm as well has represented buyers in Nahariya, all the way up north, Carmiel, Nahariya. That was our tip. And then all the way down to Eilat, we've done some transactions there as well. There are transactions done in the Judea and Samaria area. That is a very popular place to buy these days. And the government's actually encouraging many Olim to go to these areas. And if you purchase in these areas before you make Aliyah, you'll be entitled to a complete exemption from purchase tax these days. So that is also a great incentive for these areas. We are all over the place. The idea is that we hold our clients' hands through the entire transaction, wherever it is that they want to go. And we have associates and professionals who work with us, such as inspectors in these areas as well, who go and do inspections. We work with realtors. Noam Bassel is a great realtor. I'm happy to recommend him. There are other realtors in these areas as well that we're happy to recommend. So it all depends on the client's needs and what they're looking for. And as soon as they contact us, we're happy to help out with the transaction wherever it may be in Israel.
Excellent. And Daniel, I think I know what your answer is going to be, but could you answer that question as well?
So I only work in Jerusalem. No, I'm just kidding. We work with money all over, with people from all over the world. So in our office we have people who speak Spanish, Italian, French, Hebrew. One or two people speak English as well, and we are because when we're transferring money, it's all done electronically. All of our communication is, through secure email and recorded phone conversations. So it really doesn't matter where a person is and where the money needs to go. So that for us, it's really, there's no difference between Jerusalem, Eilat, Midan, Lad, Beersheba. It's all the same for us.
Awesome. Well, I think that's about as much time as we have. There were a few more questions, but I think hopefully we covered most of them. I appreciate the panelists' time today. I appreciate you, all the attendees who showed up. There's quite a few people out there listening, so that was great. I really appreciate your time today. We will be posting the recording of the session, so if you missed something, if you want to go back and review it, it'll be available on Facebook, and we'll email everybody who signed up with the details as well. If you've got any specific questions, anything we didn't answer today, or anything that's specific to your situation, feel free to reach out to any of the professionals you heard tonight, and they'll happily answer your questions.
Thank you, Hillel. Wonderful moderator. Woohoo!
Very much.